Before most Americans even had a chance to wake up, something massive happened. In a move that shocked the nation, the U.S. Supreme Court quietly issued a 6-3 emergency ruling, and this decision is about to affect millions of lives starting next month. No warning, no public debate, no televised arguments, just an immediate, sweeping change that fundamentally alters how power works in this country. This isn't just another ruling on a single policy or a narrow legal dispute. This decision goes far beyond that. It's a tectonic shift, shaking the very foundation of how we view legal protections in the U.S. The legal ground beneath our feet has shifted overnight, and most people still have no idea what just happened. This isn't just another headline you can skim past. This ruling will change how your rights are protected in this country, and most people don't even know it yet. Whether you realize it or not, this ruling is about to shape your daily life in ways you never expected. It's a shift in power between judges, presidents, and the American people that will leave a long-lasting impact. Think about it. From the halls of state capitals to the courtrooms in Washington, D.C. to California, the rules of the game have been rewritten in a matter of hours, and it happened with no public debate, no hearings, just a sudden, rapid decision with profound consequences. This is the kind of ruling that doesn't feel real until it hits you directly. If you want to stay ahead of this monumental shift, make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for the next updates. You won't want to miss out on how this will impact you, your rights, and the future of the country. In the early hours of the morning, the U.S. Supreme Court made a historic decision, one that has already begun reshaping the nation's legal framework. This wasn't a decision born from months of debate or public hearings. It was delivered swiftly, under the radar, and with a 6-3 vote. The case at the center of this sudden ruling was Trump versus Casa Incorporated, a high-stakes legal battle that revolved around the concept of birthright citizenship. But this case wasn't just about immigration law or citizenship. It became the vehicle for something much more profound. The court took the opportunity to settle a decades-long internal struggle over judicial power, one that has quietly influenced the judicial system for years. The ruling addressed what's known as nationwide injunctions, a tool previously used by federal judges to block a policy or law from being enforced across the entire country. These injunctions have been a common tool in high-profile legal challenges, from immigration cases to healthcare disputes. In the past, a single federal judge could issue an order that halted the enforcement of a law nationwide while the case moved through the legal system. This has led to a legal landscape where a judge in one state could freeze a policy that affects the entire nation, from voting laws to environmental regulations. For the last 25 years, nationwide injunctions were a significant method of pushing back against federal policies, with high-profile cases like DACA or healthcare regulations depending on these temporary rulings to halt the government's actions until the case was fully adjudicated. However, this era has now officially ended. The Supreme Court's ruling in this case declared that federal judges no longer have the power to issue these sweeping orders. The decision is monumental because it fundamentally shifts the balance of power in the judicial system. No longer can one judge in one courtroom make a decision that stops a national policy in its tracks. This decision redefines how constitutional challenges will be handled in the U.S., as it dramatically limits the scope of judicial oversight over executive and legislative actions. This ruling came as a shock to many. While the case itself centered on a policy related to birthright citizenship, the court used this platform to address a much larger issue: the power of judges to grant relief to individuals who are not directly involved in a case. According to the majority opinion, written by Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the Judiciary Act of 1789 never explicitly gave judges the authority to issue orders protecting people who aren't parties to a lawsuit. In other words, the court's majority argued that judges should not be able to use their powers to block laws that affect the general population, only those who are directly involved in a specific legal dispute. Justice Neil Gorsuch, in his concurring opinion, took this argument even further, tracing judicial practice from the founding era to show that early American courts never issued injunctions that protected individuals who were not directly involved in a case. In his view, this was a modern development that had gone too far. Similarly, Justice Clarence Thomas agreed, criticizing nationwide injunctions as a tool that encouraged forum shopping, where interest groups deliberately sought out sympathetic judges to stop policies they opposed. However, the dissenting justices, led by Justice Sonia Sotomayor, argued that this decision could have dangerous consequences. They warned that by stripping courts of their ability to issue nationwide injunctions, the executive branch could now enforce unconstitutional policies while individual lawsuits slowly made their way through the system. Without the ability to halt a policy on a national scale, the justices argued, people's constitutional rights would be compromised, especially those who couldn't afford to launch individual lawsuits. The ruling, they feared, could turn constitutional rights into privileges only accessible to those with the resources to file lawsuits. This ruling marks a significant moment in the evolution of judicial power in the United States. What was once a tool for stopping federal action in its tracks is now limited, and the consequences of this shift will be felt across various legal arenas, from civil rights to environmental protections. The next few months will reveal the full impact of this decision as courts work to adjust to this new reality. The decision from the Supreme Court isn't just a legal ruling, it's a shockwave that immediately reshapes the landscape of American law. Within days of this 6-3 emergency ruling, we're already witnessing its far-reaching effects. The high-stakes power shift has begun, and it's shaking the foundation of how laws are applied across the country. The ruling eliminates what many considered a critical tool in the judicial system: nationwide injunctions. Prior to this, federal judges had the power to block policies and laws from being enforced across the entire nation with a single decision. This process could freeze laws ranging from healthcare regulations to immigration policies, even if the challenge was only brought by a single plaintiff. But under the new framework, that power is gone. The Supreme Court has decided that federal judges can no longer issue universal injunctions that freeze laws across the nation while a case works its way through the courts. This ruling will start affecting millions of Americans almost immediately. Right now, there are 68 active nationwide injunctions in place, spanning crucial issues from prescription drug access to workplace safety, environmental regulations, and election procedures. Within the next 60 to 90 days, many of these injunctions could be lifted as lower courts scramble to revise their rulings. The pace of these changes is swift, and the impact is profound. The implications of this ruling are immediate and far-reaching. For example, immigration enforcement could change dramatically. There are currently 19 injunctions limiting the actions of ICE nationwide. Now, those injunctions may only apply to specific plaintiffs in specific jurisdictions. This means the way immigration laws are enforced could look completely different depending on where you live. The same could happen for gun rights, healthcare access, environmental protections, workplace rules, and even voting laws. Your rights might now depend on your zip code rather than the Constitution. This fragmentation of the law creates a new kind of legal chaos. Federal law, in theory, exists across the entire country, but how it's enforced could vary widely. A single judge's decision in one part of the country could no longer stop a law from being enforced in every state. Instead, we might see 50 versions of the same law, with each state interpreting and applying it differently. This new era of legal fragmentation isn't just theoretical, it's already unfolding before our eyes. And the timing couldn't be more explosive. With the upcoming election year, the ruling has already sparked fierce legal battles over issues like immigration, healthcare, civil rights, and voting laws. In the next few weeks, we'll likely see attorneys general from different states filing emergency motions in federal courts, trying to preserve existing injunctions or force the immediate enforcement of policies that had been previously blocked. This rapid shift also sets the stage for the next legal fight. In fact, within 48 hours of the ruling, legal teams across the country were in emergency strategy sessions, preparing for the wave of changes coming. The Department of Justice has already warned federal agencies to prepare for laws that were thought to be blocked to suddenly take effect, possibly within weeks. The response to this decision is already massive. States are reacting quickly, and so are major organizations, legal teams, and advocacy groups. They know that the landscape has shifted dramatically, and that the fight for civil rights and constitutional protections has just become even more complex. As we move forward, the question remains, will this decision lead to a more effective, streamlined legal system? Or will it simply create a patchwork of inconsistent, unequal application of the law across the nation? As this ruling begins to affect policies and practices across the country, it's crucial for you to stay informed. Hit the subscribe button now, because this is exactly the kind of Supreme Court decision that can reshape your life, whether you realize it or not. Stay tuned, and be sure to share your thoughts on how this ruling might impact you. How do you think the end of nationwide injunctions will change the legal battles in your state? Join the conversation below and let us know what you think. The impact of the Supreme Court's decision is not just immediate, it's setting the stage for a massive shift in how laws are applied across the United States. One of the most significant consequences is the fragmentation of legal protections. What we're seeing is a future where federal policies may no longer apply uniformly across the entire country. Imagine a scenario where laws that were once enforced equally in every state could now vary based on your zip code. This creates an environment where, depending on where you live, you might experience a very different interpretation or enforcement of the same law. This is a problem for citizens who rely on national protections to safeguard their rights. Instead, the law is now subject to the whims of local judges in different regions, leading to a patchwork legal system. The ruling has already triggered intense reactions from both sides of the political spectrum, with state attorneys general scrambling to either enforce the laws that were previously blocked or to preserve the injunctions that protected certain policies. For instance, Texas has already filed motions to narrow the injunctions that had been blocking certain immigration enforcement policies. On the flip side, California and New York are fighting to protect nationwide blocks on federal policies they oppose, particularly concerning areas like immigration, healthcare, and voting rights. These filings demonstrate just how much the Supreme Court's decision has thrown the legal system into disarray, with multiple jurisdictions now battling over the same issues. This is the legal chaos the ruling has created different rules in different places, depending on which judge you get. This legal fragmentation will not only affect people's everyday lives, but also have long-term consequences for businesses and industries across the country. Corporations that operate across multiple states will now face the reality of having to comply with different versions of federal laws in different regions. Whether it's banking, healthcare, technology, or pharmaceuticals, industries will need to navigate a complex web of regulations that vary from state to state, increasing the cost of compliance and causing confusion. Estimates suggest that this fragmentation could cost businesses tens of billions of dollars annually, as they try to keep up with a constantly shifting landscape of legal requirements. But the real danger lies in the impact on the average American. Federal laws like those protecting civil rights, environmental standards, and workplace safety could now be enforced in a manner that is inconsistent and, in many cases, less protective. Civil rights organizations like the ACLU and the NAACP, which once relied on nationwide injunctions as powerful tools for dismantling systemic discrimination, now find themselves stripped of one of their most effective legal weapons. They will have to pursue legal challenges case by case, and that's going to raise the cost of litigation, making it harder for people, especially those who can't afford it, to fight for their rights. For those who rely on these protections, like many in marginalized communities, this new legal landscape is a cruel blow. The shift in power is clear. With fewer options for nationwide injunctions, people seeking justice will now be forced to battle in smaller, more isolated legal environments. This could drastically alter the ability of individuals to challenge unconstitutional policies or laws. Instead of broad, sweeping protections, each person will have to fight their own battle, one courtroom at a time. And, as we've seen in the past, those with the most resources are often the ones who win. What we are witnessing is the beginning of a legal landscape that looks vastly different from what we've known for the past few decades. It's not just about a Supreme Court decision. It's a tectonic shift that alters the very way we understand constitutional rights and how they're enforced in America. This fragmented system is creating a new reality for every citizen and every business in the United States. Some people may have better access to justice than others, and that's a system that leaves far too many vulnerable. The consequences of this ruling will unfold over the coming months and years, but one thing is certain: America's legal system will never be the same again. In the wake of the Supreme Court's ruling, advocacy organizations that relied on nationwide injunctions are facing a significant challenge. Groups like the ACLU, NAACP, and Alliance Defending Freedom use these injunctions to block harmful policies nationwide. This tool was crucial in civil rights, immigration, and other contentious legal battles. With the court's decision to end nationwide injunctions, these organizations now face greater difficulty in protecting citizens' rights. Instead of a single federal judge halting harmful laws nationwide, challenges must now be filed in local jurisdictions. This could lead to a patchwork of legal protections where people in different states may have varying levels of protection. The impact is immediate and significant. Legal costs are expected to rise 5 to 8 times, as plaintiffs will need to file multiple lawsuits across the country instead of one unified case. This makes it harder for many, especially marginalized communities, to challenge unconstitutional policies. The ruling could also create a fragmented legal landscape, where protections, like voting laws and immigration policies, vary by state or district. This chaos could leave citizens vulnerable to policies that would have been easier to contest before, further weakening civil rights efforts. The Supreme Court's 6-3 emergency ruling in Trump versus Casa Incorporated isn't just a single legal decision, it's a tectonic shift in the legal landscape of the United States. This ruling has fundamentally changed how constitutional rights are protected, and its implications will be felt across the nation for years to come. No longer will federal judges have the power to issue nationwide injunctions, the very tool that allowed courts to freeze a policy across the entire country. Instead, the court has opened the door for fragmented enforcement, where laws and policies will now be implemented unevenly across different regions. This creates a situation where the rights of the American people may not be uniformly protected from state to state. The decision could set the stage for a future where what is true in one part of the country may not be true in another. The immediate fallout is already underway, and the legal chaos this ruling may bring is only just beginning to unfold. Already, attorneys general from multiple states are scrambling to adjust the legal landscape. Some are trying to preserve existing injunctions, while others are eager to enforce laws that had been on hold for years. This division reflects the bigger picture: a system where rights are no longer guaranteed for everyone in the same way, but rather are dependent on where you live or who you know. For individuals, this could mean vastly different legal outcomes depending on the jurisdiction they find themselves in. For businesses, this could lead to tremendous costs as they navigate the fragmented regulatory environment that is quickly developing. And it's not just about businesses or states. This ruling affects real people, especially those fighting for their rights in immigration, healthcare, and civil rights cases. What was once a unified national standard is now at risk of becoming a fragmented patchwork of varying rulings and protections. Civil rights groups, which once relied on nationwide injunctions as a powerful legal tool to fight systemic issues, are now left scrambling for new ways to protect vulnerable populations. The ruling undermines efforts to dismantle discrimination and ensures that only those with the resources to sue those who can afford to navigate this more complex system will be able to secure relief. But the potential consequences extend far beyond the immediate. Looking forward, we're entering a new era of American law, where federal law may be applied differently in every state. The legal patchwork is likely to grow as the nation prepares for the 2026 election cycle. We could soon see a situation where voting laws, immigration policies, and even healthcare access differ depending on the jurisdiction. This fragmentation is not just a legal inconvenience, it's a threat to the core principle that all Americans should be equally protected under the law. So, the big question remains: was the Supreme Court right to end nationwide injunctions, or has it fractured the rule of law in a way that will undermine the fairness and consistency of our legal system? The answer to this question will define the future of American law and rights. We could be entering an era of uneven justice, where the rights you hold dear depend not on the Constitution, but on where you live. As we look to the future, the consequences of this decision are already playing out in real time. We're on the brink of a new era in American law, and it's up to all of us to watch closely and engage in the conversation. The outcome of this decision may shape the direction of the nation for decades to come. If you want to stay ahead of these changes, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and tell me in the comments what you think. Was the Supreme Court right to end nationwide injunctions, or did it fracture the rule of law? Your answer may say more about the future of America than you realize. Let's keep the conversation going.